Welcome to episode 99 of Sport SA Daily Diary. Today we're chatting to multiple South African champion and Formula One racer, Ian Scheckter. Good afternoon, Ian. How are you doing, sir?
Good, thanks. How are you, Adam?
Very well, thank you. It's certainly an honor to chat to a member of the Scheckter family.
Thank you.
Ian, tell me, obviously you and your brother Jody were both into Formula One. Tell us when you guys started motor racing. At what age were you guys when you first sort of had an interest in the sport?
Well, you know, the Scheckter family, my father, my two uncles all had motor trade businesses when we were born. And, you know, East London had racing on the beachfront from, I think, around about 1950, 51. I was about 4 years old. And we used to go to all the races from then, never missed them. Then in 59, they built the new Grand Prix track, and we were there as kids. And then my father, in those days, obviously, there were no pits and no transporters. So in the evenings, the guys used to bring their race cars to the local garages to work on in the evening. And my father was one of the guys that opened up his workshops. So Jody and I were lucky enough to get into the workshops and sit in the cars and look at them and drool over them. And I guess that's probably where the interest started. But, you know, my uncle raced pre-war in the Grand Prix in East London. So I guess somewhere in the blood there was motor industry, motor racing. And then I think we both got go-karts whilst we were at school. Jody got one first because he was very much into mechanicals and I wasn't that way inclined. And then I got a go-kart and we both did very badly at school that year. So my father, in his wisdom, that I guess in hindsight wasn't right, he took the go-karts away. But he should have maybe left us with the go-karts and given up school. But anyway, that's where it was. And then we both had buzz bikes and we used to race those around town. And eventually the bug bit, we got onto the track.
And was there a bit of competitiveness between the two of you?
Yeah, there was. I mean, besides motor racing, we were competitive just being alive. So, yeah, but we never really got to race seriously against each other because Jody, when I turned 18, in those days you had to be 18 to get a license. I raced bikes for 4 years, and Jody, when he turned 18, we couldn't find a bike for him. He had raced a buzz bike up till then. So he found a scrap Reynolds. He was working for my father as an apprentice. He found a scrap Reynolds and started building up that Reynolds that he raced in South Africa. The only time we really got to race each other was a couple of Grand Prix in South Africa, and then the season I did over there. But you know, he was in a Wolf and I was in a March. Makes a big difference because in the picture behind you, you could see Emerson behind me. And, you know, Emerson was a world champion, but he had changed to the Kopasuka by then. So, in fact, him and I actually had more real dices than Jody and I.
Yeah. And, I mean, you had amazing success in South Africa. You won 6 championships, 76, 77, 78, 79, 83, 84. I mean, you certainly dominated the circuits over here.
Well, you know, I had done Formula One in 74 and 75, and going from there to the Formula Atlantics, it was a very easy step backwards, you know. But just to point out, because nobody ever points it out, I won the Driver to Europe award, and I won it overall, you know, whereas Jody only won Best South African. So that was a feather in my cap. I beat Tony Price, who went on to drive for Graham Hill, and remember got killed in the plane crash with Graham Hill. He was going to be a star. And then they had that Phillips International with Gilles Villeneuve came out. Rupert Keegan, the Formula 3 British champion, came out. And I won that series as well. So, and then I won the Formula 2 championship in South Africa in 73. So I've actually won 9 South African titles, but that's bragging.
Well, that's what you should be doing. I mean, you're an amazing South African champion.
Yeah.
Ian, tell us about your first Formula One race. I believe you're racing for Team Gunston.
Yeah.
Was it a step up from anything you'd done before in your career to that point?
Well, I was bikes for 4 years, and then I followed Jody around on that driver to Europe in the Formula Fords. And that's when that bit me, the bug there bit me about cars. And I bought the car from Peter Hull, who won the series overall. I had to borrow some money to make it happen. My father reluctantly lent me a few bob. And I raced Fords for the 1 year, and then went over to England. And when I was in England racing Fords, Gunston, I came home on holiday to see my girlfriend. And then Gunston caught me at the airport on the way back to England and offered me the Formula 2 drive, and gave me a week to make up my mind. And the difference is in England, we were really battling. I mean, not to win, that was the easier part, but just living in England, it was so different to our lifestyle, and the preparation of the car was a big problem for me. So they gave me a week to make up my mind, and they offered me a Formula 2 car. John Love was going to be my teammate, pay me a salary, pay me bonus money, pay all expenses. So it was almost a no-brainer to come back and do the South African. So I did Formula 2, and from Formula 2, it was about a 300 horsepower car. Formula 1 was about 500 horsepower. So my first race, if you remember, at the end of 73, we had the fuel crisis. So we didn't get any time to test the Formula 1 car. So the first time to sit in the Formula 1 car was at the Grand Prix. And I was sitting in the car, ready to go out, first time ever in F1. And those days F1 cars were scary. We didn't know a lot about them. We didn't have TV. We never ever saw them like today. People know Formula 1 backwards. And before I pulled out, they stopped practice because Peter Revson got killed. And I remember sitting in the car thinking to myself, shit, I should get out this car and go home, because this is a coffin on wheels. I could be dead in 15 minutes time. But I didn't have the big enough balls to get out the car. I had smaller balls and stayed in the car. And
obviously big balls to stay in.
Well, if I had real balls, I would have got out, because they were bloody dangerous. So I'd never driven one. But, as the weekend went by, I got used to the car. The Lotus 72 was a fantastic motor car, probably one of the best ever. And I got to drive it, and I really enjoyed it. It was a fantastic car to drive.
And what sort of speeds were you doing in the cars in those days?
I think we used to pull at Kyalami about 275, 280 k's an hour. The cars were pretty quick. They were light. Formula 1 cars in those days were light. So even though we only had 500 horsepower, the cars were pretty nimble. I mean, when you look at a modern Formula 1 car, it's about 1.5 meters longer. It's about 250 kilos heavier. So it's a different animal altogether. So they were quick. And, it was all manual steering, manual gears, manual clutch brakes. So they were a lot harder to drive, more hard work, but they were still great. They were built for the job, especially in South Africa, because I had the Lotus first, and then I had Jody's Tyrrell. And that's a big difference between my success here and in England. Here I had one of the best mechanics in the world, Ken Howes, who went on to win 11 NASCAR championships in America. And he prepared my cars beautifully, and I had the best cars. Not necessarily better than Charlton's Lotus and his McLaren. The McLaren was an excellent motor car as well.
And Ian, I mean, you say that as drivers, you had to do a lot more in terms of changing gear and all of that kind of thing. Do you think that essentially made the drivers of your day more talented than the drivers of today?
I think it's a different talent, because I couldn't drive the modern car because that steering wheel would confuse me completely. So I think we worked harder in the car. I think in the 50s, Fangio and them worked twice as hard as we worked. But, if you take a track like Monaco, where you're changing gears, 20, 30 times a lap, I guess, and you've got one hand on the wheel, and it's manual, it's no power steering. Today they've got power steering, power brakes, power throttle. power paddle shift gears. No, I think where we were maybe more skilled than them, I wouldn't say talented, is that when we had proper curbs. So we had to go from point A to point B to the, like be precise. If we clipped a curb, that would upset your corner completely. Today, when you look at the circuits, there are no curbs, they're flat. So the guys have got no apex. The apex is good anywhere, and the exit's good anywhere. So I think we had to be more accurate than them and had to just work a little harder.
And you had 20 Formula One races. Any specific favorite race and any specific favorite track?
Well, Kyalami for me was always very special as a track, the old original Kyalami. It was especially with that era of car. The modern era of car wouldn't work at Kyalami because you'd lose so much on the back section that you wouldn't get the toe. I mean, the quick formula to fix modern Formula One is to allow DRS on all the straights if you are within a second. When I watch the Formula E, what do you call it, e-sport racing, when you watch the Brazil race where they don't get handicapped by following in the corners, that race was fantastic, Albon and Leclerc. Whereas Formula One real can't do that, but they could do that if they were allowed to catch up on each straight. So the quick fix, without going to all the stupid hundreds of millions of dollars to fix cars, they just need to play DRS in all the sections if you're within a second. And don't forget, if you go past Hamilton, he's got the same advantage going around the back section, so he'll get you on the next straight. And all of a sudden, the racing would change completely. But Kyalami was my favorite, but if you're asking about a fantastic race, was my first Formula One win in South Africa, actually. I think I got pole, I can't remember, but I had Charlton on my backside for the whole race, right till the last flag. And, you had to make sure that you never made one error because, one error, they get by. So that was a good challenge for me. And that happened because we changed from Firestone to Goodyear. For the first half of the season, we ran Firestone, and I burnt those tires out. Halfway through the race, I was gone. But when we changed to Goodyears, I won 5 of the last 6 races. But the first one, why it was so special was we won the race that day, and then that night, my son Jackie, my first son, was born. So that makes a memory, if you know what I mean.
Oh, what a perfect day.
Yeah.
Ian, your last race was supposed to be in Japan, but unfortunately you were detained and sent home because you had the wrong visa. That must have been a bit of a downer.
Well, I think, in those days we were now getting close to the height of anti-apartheid and stuff like that. So I tried to get in with a tourist visa because with a sport visa, I knew I was going to get bumped, I wasn't going to get there. So I got there, and in fact, it was a hell of a mission because I'd raced in Cape Town the weekend and flew back to Joburg, flew to London, got my visa, and then we flew to Japan. And they stamped my passport, and I took one step and they called me back. And I saw a picture of myself on the counter there. And I have a feeling when I think about it, soon before that, or not a year or two, I can't remember, a Japanese jockey came out to ride a horse in South Africa, and they wouldn't let him. And I don't know if there was a bit of a retaliation there. Anyway, they put me under like hotel house arrest, airport arrest, and I was put in a room and said to wait there. And I thought I'd go for a walk, but when I opened the door, there was a guy with a gun standing at my door, so I couldn't go anywhere. They called me back about midnight and interrogated me again, and I said, look, I'm not a terrorist. I'm not anything. I mean, let me just watch the race. I'm here as a tourist then. No, we weren't interested. We had no cell phones. I couldn't contact Max Mosley, who was my boss at the time. So I was back in the room, and then at 4 o'clock, they called me up and put me on the plane to France. Another part of the trip was we went via Anchorage, and they said, everybody can get off except Mr. Scheckter. They took me by a guard, put me in the basement of the airport at Anchorage, put me back on the plane and dropped me off in Paris, where I didn't even start. And that goes further. I couldn't find my luggage, so I went to the girl at the counter, one of the air hostess, whatever they are, And I said, look, I need to get to England. And she said to me, and I told her my sad story. Anyway, she said, look, we don't book seats here. Here's a ticket, get on first. The poor guy at the end, he won't get a seat. I got to London and checked in a hotel and had a few beers. It was
Sure.
like 4 days without stopping.
The most welcome beer you've ever had.
Yeah. Especially English beer is quite good, actually.
Yeah. And Ian, since obviously your days of Formula One, there have been some phenomenal drivers, some phenomenal champions. I take it you're still a fan of Formula One?
Yeah, I watch every race. I don't say I'm a fan of what they're doing, but I can't not watch, if you know what I mean.
So, I mean, I'm a fan. I probably, I wouldn't say I'm the biggest fan, but I certainly watch some of the races. But for me, they've become very procession-like in terms of, obviously, Lewis Hamilton's dominating, and he's a phenomenal driver, take nothing away from Lewis. But the car is the differentiating factor. Do you think that's a problem for the sport?
Yeah, look, the cars have, unfortunately with the computer era, it takes away so much because what you feed into the computer is what you get out. So they're all feeding in similar stats and figures and dimensions. And the cars, that's why they all virtually look the same. They don't all go the same because of the budgets and the testing in their wind tunnel. I went to McLaren factory and it's just so outrageous, what they're doing in Formula One. But I guess they're all doing it. But cutting back now on expenditure by a long way. The engines are getting a bit more on parity. I think this year, Adrian Newey's chassis, the Red Bull are always the best chassis, and that Honda engine's come a long way. I don't know if you watched Brazil last year when Hamilton tried to drag Gasly to the line to finish the race second, and he couldn't get by the Honda. And that's a good indication that this year, and obviously Verstappen is bloody good. But the whole problem is the cars can't follow. And that's why I came up earlier with that GRS suggestion, is because the cars are failures as a racing car. It's the best one-lap wonder in the world, but they're failures as racing cars. Is if they played with the DRS a lot more, I think you'd have a lot more racing. But, it's 1 more year, 2 more years, I think, and then they're going to change the whole car, and hopefully those cars can follow. See, in my era, when I followed Charlton, because in the beginning he was ahead of me, I followed in Barbecue, Yixkay, Sunset, 3 of the fastest corners in the world. And I didn't even know there was an aero influence, There was no aero influence. So you knew you had to be that close. So when you came out of Leeuwkop, if you were 1 meter behind him, you could get him on the straight with a toe. But with a modern car today, you would have come out 50, 60 yards behind him and you would have missed the toe. So it's the car designs that they've flawed. And that's the biggest problem. Never mind Mercedes is great. The cars are flawed, and they know it's flawed. Besides the sound, they destroyed that too.
And sort of in my lifetime, there've been some phenomenal champions. You've got your Sennas and your Prost and your Schumachers and your Hamiltons. Obviously, there were more in your era. In your opinion, who's been the best of the lot as a driver?
Well, I think the quickest driver ever was Senna. People are saying, oh, Prost. But you must remember, Prost took Senna out for sure in the very first championship, and he got paid back. And so Senna lost a championship there. But when you look at their pole positions, I went to watch one Grand Prix, and Senna was in pole and Prost was second. He was 1.5 seconds slower than Senna. Now, in today's era, 1.5 seconds, you get fired. Another thing you must remember is Prost actually got fired from 2 teams, Renault and Ferrari. So, and he left McLaren very unhappy. So as much as he was a professor, in those days there were a lot of car failures. You could come from 6th or 7th and, wait till the end and your tires were better and the other cars were braking, and like Mansell blew a tire to lose a championship in the last race. I think Raikkonen won it, I'm not sure, but no, it wasn't Raikkonen. Anyway, doesn't matter. But Senna in outright speed for me. But in this modern era, I've been a Hamilton fan from the beginning. If you remember his very first year in Formula One as a rookie, he was quicker than Alonso, who was a double world champion, who's just beaten Michael Schumacher 2 years in a row in the heyday of his Ferrari career. So when I analyze all that, I put Hamilton the best. But I see these youngsters, they're coming through for, Leclerc and the Ferrari. I think Russell, when he gets the right car, George Russell. And of course, Verstappen is proving himself very quick and not taking people out anymore. But they all took people out. If you remember Jody's third Grand Prix, was it at Silverstone? He took out half the field. And, they've all had their turns. Villeneuve took out a lot of people. But Verstappen's got over that hurdle now. I think he's going to be a serious threat this year.
And it's been pretty unfortunate. There haven't been any South African Formula One races really since your brother and yourself. Why do you think that is? And do you think there is any potential for a future South African? It's just, I suppose it's so restrictive with the costs.
Well, it is. It's almost impossible. People ask me when their sons are doing well, what should I do with my son? I said, unless he's winning outright in South Africa and you've got the budget to go to Formula One, don't even dream of leaving the country. We did that with my son, cost millions of rands. And in the end, you still don't pick up a budget. It's a little better today because of all the junior teams. Ferrari got a junior team and Red Bull. And those people have got junior teams and sign up drivers that are showing potential. But you still got to get there to show your potential. And that costs multi-millions, I don't think they even have a Formula 4. I think Ford in England, you got to go Formula 4 and the budget there, I think is $1.5 million. You multiply that into rands, there's just not that kind of money. I think what the Van der Lindes have done and Pepper has done, I don't know who's backing them, but they're running for Audi and they ran Volkswagen. There's some money around to help that. Tasman got lucky with the lady racing and she qualified 10th, so I guess she's going to get another season. And that might be a path, but the single-seater path today, in our era, I took my Formula Ford over to England and I was competitive. Jody bought Vanderbilt, Collins' car, which was Emerson's car, for a couple of grand, and he was competitive. But I think that era's gone now, unfortunately.
And do you think we're going to see a lady in a Formula One seat soon?
No. They were racing pre-war. They raced post-war. The best lady I've seen so far in my lifetime has been Danica Patrick, who went in IndyCars and actually won an IndyCar race. That was amazing. And she raced NASCAR, which I want to tell you, that's the biggest bully field anybody could go and race in. And they did bully her, and she did okay. But, how can I say? In every other sport, they don't compete equally. Tennis, golf, rugby, soccer, whatever sport, swimming. Motor racing, Formula One cars, much lighter to drive now, but just somehow they've never ever shown that speed. And it's all very well to have a women's formula and get the best of the woman, but what they really should do is put a woman in Formula 4, Formula 3, Formula 2 in a top team and let her compete against men and get that experience. It's a hell of a lot better than beating 19 other women, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, and it's been awesome chatting to you today on Sport SA Daily Diary. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your stories. Good luck with the rest of lockdown, and let's hope the motorsport is back on TV soon.
Yeah, well, we got next weekend, I think, Austria, isn't it? Is the 4th next weekend, I think. Not tomorrow, I mean the weekend after, yeah. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that, I'm sure. And the Red Bulls go very well there, so don't think it's a pure Mercedes race. It might be a twist.
Let's hope there is. Brilliant. Yeah. Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, Adam.
Cheers.
Keep on.
It's a landmark edition for Sport SA Daily Diary tomorrow. In our 100th edition, we'll be chatting to the South African that was the first Olympic medalist since readmission.